welcome to another Dante's Hearthstone video. Today we are going to be going over some of the nerfs that are going to be happening to some of our favorite cards that we've had in the past. These are going to take effect when Whispers of the Old Gods comes out on April 26th. And if you guys have been playing Hearthstone for a while, some of you remember some of the past nerfs. There was a nerf to Starving Buzzard. Hunters used to couple the Starving Buzzard with Unleash the Hounds, and they would get massive card draw from it. So they had to raise the mana cost of the Starving Buzzard. There was also a card called Warsong Commander that was used in early patron decks. And they ended up changing that one. They changed the card effect from minions with 3 or less attack gain charge to give +1 attack to charge minions. But enough of that. We're going to go ahead and get into the first of the 12 cards that they're going to be nerfing. The first one that we're going to look at is going to be the Ancient of Lore card for Druids. It was a 7 mana 5/5. It was a choose one card. You had the option of drawing 2 cards or restoring 5 health. The change that is going to go into effect is it's still going to be 7 mana and it's still going to be a 5/5. But the new card effect is choose one, draw a card, or restore 5 health. Now, druids typically, ramp druids specifically, use this card for card draw to try and look for answers for late game. But some of them may still run this card because the health, the heal, didn't really change, but Healing Touch is actually a lot cheaper than trying to play Ancient of Lore. Healing Touch is actually an 8 health heal. But some people may still play the Ancient of Lore because it's a 5/5 body for 7 mana, and they can still get the heal from the minion. The next card we're going to take a look at for the nerfs is going to be Keeper of the Groves. Keeper of the Grove is... it's still pretty much the same. The only difference is it's got a little bit less health. So instead of it being a 4 mana 2/4, it's now a 4 mana 2/2. I don't really feel this to be that big of a change because most of the time when people play Keepers of the Grove, they use it for the spell, the card text more than they do for the body. So I have a feeling that Keeper of the Grove will still be ran for the silence effect and for the option of dealing 2 damage to a minion. So this change doesn't really affect gameplay for me so much because when I do play Keeper of the Grove, yes, it's great that you have a 2/2 or 2/4 body on the board, but the effect that you get from Keeper of the Grove is still the key point of the card. You're still able to deal 2 damage, and you're still able to have the option of silencing a minion. So I still see this card will probably still see a lot of play for the card text effect. Now the next one is a really big jump, but we're going to take a look at Big Game Hunter. Big Game Hunter is, right now, is one of the biggest answers to anybody who plays Dr. Boom. You play Dr. Boom, your opponent's answer is Big Game Hunter. And the card itself is still pretty much the same. The attack and the health is still the same. The card effect is still the same. The only difference is they are now making it cost 2 more mana. So instead of it costing 3 mana, it's going to cost 5 mana. But there have been several matches that I've played where I don't really use Boom, or I don't really use Big Game Hunter on, say, Dr. Boom until at least turn 7, because Boom is going to be played on 7, and Big Game Hunter only costs 5. So it's really not that bad increasing the mana cost by 2, but for people that basically would play Boom and then they would play, say, a Frostbolt to kill another minion, or on, say, turn 9, they would play Big Game Hunter and play a Blizzard to try and clear the rest of the board. You're not going to be able to really do that anymore. Even if you were at 10 mana, you still can't do the Blizzard or a high cost AoE spell. But with it still being 5 mana, it's still really got a good removal effect for a lot of the legendaries that are actually coming out in Whispers. Um, but as far as the mana cost being 5, I still think people are still going to try and find a way to fit this into their deck. You can still play it with Thaurissan. Thaurissan still reduces the mana cost of all cards in your hand by 1, so some people may still hang on to Big Game Hunter, wait till Thaurissan lowers it to 3, and still make it work. So the mana cost being 5, you can still work around that with Thaurissan, because a lot of decks use Thaurissan to lower the cost of a lot of spells in their hand already. So if you just hang on to Big Game Hunter and Thaurissan's able to get 3 ticks, you've got a 3 mana cost Big Game Hunter again. So there's a lot of cards that that one specific card that you can probably use to make your Big Game Hunter cheap again. But I still think people will run this a lot because of the bigger legendaries that are still out there. So I don't think Big Game Hunter is going to go away forever. I still think it will be used. The next card we're going to take a look at for nerfs is going to be Blade Flurry. Blade Flurry got a whole overhaul here. It used to be a 2 mana rogue spell card, destroy your weapon and deal its damage to all enemies. Now what that meant is, say you had a 7 attack dagger and you only had 1 durability on it, you went ahead and or 2 durability on it. You went ahead and attacked with that 7 attack weapon, you hit the enemy hero in the face, and then you turn around and Blade Flurry. And what that would do is it would take your weapon and it would do 7 damage to all minions and to your opponent. Now what they've done as far as the nerf is they've made it 4 mana, and they've changed the card text to say destroy your weapon and it deals damage to all enemy minions, which means it will no longer do damage to your opponent's hero. It will only damage your opponent's minions. So those old Blade Flurry finishers where people would destroy their weapons to do that extra damage to their opponent's hero is gone. Not going to be able to do it anymore. It's not going to happen. But I don't know if we're really... I think this is just basically going to be a normal AoE spell for rogues, as far as it not being able to damage your opponent's hero. For the most part, all of the AoE spells only did enemy minions. Um, Flame Strike only did enemy minions. Blizzard only did enemy minions. Um, Even the AoE death rattles from, say, Unstable Ghoul and from Abomination, it only did it to minions. It never really did the opponent's hero. So for them to go ahead and change this to all enemy minions, it kind of evens out the playing field because people were taking advantage of this card in the past to basically make it a finisher for rogues, where they could basically clear the battlefield, do the 7 damage to the opponent's face, Blade Flurry, kill all the minions on your opponent's side of the field, and do that same amount of damage to the hero, and the game would finish. I don't foresee Blade Flurry being played in the future because it doesn't do any damage to the enemy hero. But as far as it being it would be a basic AoE spell in the future for rogues. I know rogues usually hang on to their weapons for their Tinkmaster oil or their deadly poison. Um, but we'll see if this does still get played. But I don't really see this card getting played much after they nerf it. The next card we're going to take a look at is going to be the Iron Beak Owl. The Iron Beak Owl, it only got a slight change. Um, Not that really big of a change. I mean, it didn't really cost that much to begin with, and making it to where it costs 3 mana is not really that big a deal. Um, I mean, there are a lot of decks that run at least 1 or 2 of these just in case to try and get around a taunt or to get around a death rattle effect like Mad Scientist or a Leper Gnome or even say a Sludge Belcher to where you get rid of the taunt and you get rid of the death rattle. So it's not really that big of a change, just making it cost 1 more mana. Iron Beak Owl will still probably be ran because it only costs, say, 1 more mana. Now, if they made it to where it costs, like, say, 5 mana, I don't think Iron Beak Owl would get played anymore. But the fact that it's only now costing 3 mana, I think it'll still see a lot of gameplay. The next card is going to be Master of Disguise. Now, this one I don't think is going to get played. I mean, it doesn't get played that much right now as it is. But a lot of people would couple this card in Miracle Rogue to try and stealth their Gaggitston Auctioneer. Because the original text was, Battlecry gave a friendly minion stealth. Which means you would put the stealth on your Gaggitston Auctioneer. It would be permanent. You could still run spells, and it would still trigger your Gaggitston Auctioneer. Now, with the nerf, the text now reads, give a friendly minion stealth until your next turn. Which means you have less time to try and get those spells out off of your Gaggitston Auctioneer. So I think what people are going to end up running instead, because it's permanent, is going to be Conceal. I think Conceal will still get ran because Conceal basically gives them stealth permanently. It might get rarely ran. I mean, it's a 4 mana 4/4, and you still get the stealth effect until next turn. But with it only being until your next turn, I mean, you could possibly just try and pop as many spells off of your Gadgets and Auctioneer as you could to, try and get that maximum value out of your Gadgets and Auctioneer before it loses its stealth. But I still think that people will probably run Conceal instead. I mean, Conceal gives your minions stealth until your next turn also, but with the Master of Disguise, Master of Disguise costs 4 mana to give a friendly minion stealth until your next turn. Whereas Conceal only costs 1 mana, and it'll just conceal your Gadgets and Auctioneer, and you get a card draw off of your Gadgets and Auctioneer because it's a spell. But, like I said before, Master of Disguise really doesn't see that much play anyway already. So this change is not that big for me because it doesn't get played that much anyway. Now the next card nerf is a big one. And when I say big, I'm talking Molten Giant big. And Molten Giant is a card that is ran in a lot of decks, specifically Handlock. Handlock typically runs Molten Giants because what they do is because they only cost 20 mana, means that you could get yourself down to 10 health. These guys would cost 0. You'd throw out 2 Molten Giants and a Sun Fury Protector, and you would be protected for at least two turns or more, and it would sometimes be a game finisher. Now, with the Molten Giant change, they are now going to cost 25 mana, which means now, if you're playing a Handlock and you want to try and get those 2 free Molten Giants, you're now going to have to get yourself down to 5 health. And by getting yourself down to 5 health, you're pretty much basically handing the game to your opponent, saying, here, kill me, because I'm at 5 health, and even if you were to drop 2 Molten Giants and that Sun Fury Protector still at 5 health, all your opponent has to do, if you're playing against a mage, is just to fireball you, and it's game over. Hunter's another one that could probably kill you real easily. He could just do two arcane shots and a hero power, and that finishes the game. There are some classes that you'd probably still die really easily to with only having 5 health. Will Molten Giant still see gameplay? Yes, possibly. I'm possibly saying that it may get played in wild mode still, because you'll still be able to use your antique heal bot, because in wild you can play any cards. So what you could do theoretically is you could play your 2 Molten Giants with being at 5 health, play your Sun Fury Protector, play an antique heal bot, heal yourself back up to about 12 health, and you'd probably still be able to manage it because you're able to boost yourself back up to um, 12 health from the 5 health you were at to try and summon your Molten Giants for free. In Standard, I don't really think that I'm going to see much gameplay for the Molten Giants because you're going to have to get yourself down to at least 5 health to make them free. Will people find ways around this 25 mana to make it feasible to still play Molten Giants? Absolutely. There's probably going to be a way around to make them viable again. It's probably going to be a while. Does this mean Handlock may disappear completely? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe people will put in Frost Giants instead because Handlocks typically tend to use their hero powers a lot, and Frost Giants become cheaper as you use your hero power. So that may be the replacement for the Molten Giant because you're going to use your hero power a lot in Handlock because you basically try and keep your hand as full as possible. So the more you use your hero power, by the time you've used your hero power 8 times, you would be able to summon those Frost Giants for free, and you could play your Sun Fury Protector. So let's say you start the game at 30, you have 2 Frost Giants in your deck, and you take 2 damage every time you hero power. You're going to have to hero power 8 times, which means you're going to take 16 damage, which means after 16 damage, you're going to be at about, let's see, you're going to be at about 14 health. So it still seems feasible to possibly be able to do the Frost Giants. Will people try and do the Frost Giants? More than likely, because they're probably not going to play the Molten Giants since you have to get to 5 health. If you can get yourself to 14 health, or you could even try and just throw a heal, a couple healing spells. Kill a couple minions, get some health back. Kill a couple of your demons with certain warlock spells that will restore health back to you, and just keep hero powering, and you'll still be able to try and get those Frost Giants for free. That's the only card I can think of that they would probably use to replace the Molten Giants. Yeah, because the Frost Giants cost 10, and they cost 1 less for each time you use your hero power, and they're 8/8s as well. Could people possibly keep running the Mountain Giant? Absolutely, because they didn't change that one. Sea Giant could be a replacement, maybe. Maybe you could run 1 Frost Giant, 1 Sea Giant, because Sea Giants cost 1 less for each minion on the field. Handlocks usually put a lot of big minions down, so Sea Giant may not be a good replacement for Molten Giant. I think the obvious choice is probably going to be the Frost Giant since it's based off of hero power. But we're just going to have to wait and see what people decide to replace Molten Giant with, and if Molten Giant's still going to see gameplay. The next card we're going to take a look at for the nerf is going to be Leper Gnome. Not really a big change here. It just basically reduced its health by 1. Most people use the Leper Gnome as a quick 1-drop anyway, as an opener typically. So for it to have 1 attack, not that big a deal. Most people use the value from the Leper Gnome for its Death Rattle effect. Being able to do that 2 extra damage to your opponent. With it having 1 health, not really that big a deal. So it'll probably still see a lot of gameplay. Next one we're going to take a look at is going to be a big one. Force of Nature got nerfed big time. Okay. Druids usually ran a combo. All Druids ran this combo. It was the Force of Nature Savage Roar combo, and you would be able to pull off 12 damage from your trance, and you would get 2 attack to your hero, and then if you hero powered, it would make it 3. So you had the option of doing 17, um, 17, 18. Well, anyway, it was basically a finisher combo that druids would use to finish off an opponent that was, I think it was like 20 health or below. Um, so now they have basically ruined that combo completely for druids. Druids are going to have to find a new way to come up with a finisher combo um, for the druid class, because now Force of Nature costs 5 mana, and it only summons the 3 2/2 trans. No charge, and they don't die at the end of the turn. So, if those 3 trans do survive till the following turn, you could still do your Savage Roar combo, but you're going to have to wait an extra turn, and those trans are going to have to survive that following until your following turn to be able to do the combo. Will this card still be ran? I'm unsure at this point presently, because it was a really good card before the nerf. With them taking away the charge from the cards, I don't foresee it being ran that much, but we've seen people find ways around some of these, so we're just going to have to wait and see. The next one we're going to take a look at is the Knife Juggler. It's pretty much about the same. They just adjusted the attack by 1 point. I still think it will probably be played, because most people basically play the card to play off of the card text. Being able to summon a minion and being able to do that 1 point of damage to a random minion is still a big um, key for the Knife Juggler. So I think it will probably definitely see gameplay still. The 1 attack reduction's not really that big a deal. Like I said before, we're still probably going to be basing it off of the card text, and by basing it off the card text, it'll still probably be played. The next one we're going to take a look at is going to be Hunter's Mark. Not that really big a change. They just jumped it from 0 mana to 1 mana. Still probably going to see a lot of gameplay, because it's a big core card in Hunter decks to reduce a minion's health to 1 and then remove it. So this isn't really that big a change, so this will probably still see a lot of gameplay. Now the last card we're going to take a look at is going to probably be a huge shock to a lot of people. A lot of people would power overwhelming this twice. Some people would power overwhelming and faceless manipulator it for a finishing combo. And if you haven't already guessed, it's going to be the Arcane Golem card. The Arcane Golem card, people would double power overwhelming, which would make it a 12 attack minion. And with that charge, you could Faceless Manipulator it, which would give you 24 damage that you had access to and go straight as a finisher. Now they have changed the text on it completely. It's still 3 mana. Instead of it being a 4/2, it is now a 4/4, and it no longer has charge. It just gives your opponent a mana crystal. Will this card still be played? Probably not, because it was used as a finisher card, because it had the charge ability on it. It was cheap. You could apply cheap spells to it and finish the game out pretty quickly. Now that it only gives your opponent a mana crystal, and it's a 4/4, um, maybe, um, it might still see gameplay because they gave it 2 more health because it doesn't have the charge. It's a 3 mana 4/4 now, so it might still see gameplay, but the card text of giving your opponent a mana crystal to me is a drawback. But we're just going to have to wait and see. And that is going to finish up our video on the card nerfs that will be seen when Whispers of the Old Gods come out. And we're going to see if these cards will still see gameplay or if they're not going to be played at all. We do have several cards that are coming out in Whispers of the Old Gods that may be feasible replacements for some of the cards that are being changed. People may find some of the new cards to be appropriate to replace these cards that are being nerfed instead of using the cards that are now changed, using new cards to replace them because they have similar effects to what the old cards used to have. But we're just going to have to wait and see. And as always, thank you for watching.